Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Keep the Line Moving, a podcast designed to talk about leadership, life, and inspiration. I am your host, Chris Gargano, and our topic this week is self-leadership. How well do you know yourself? How self-aware are you? How well do you know your unique talents, and do you take advantage of them by working hard to develop them? That is the focus of our guest on a daily basis. His name is Steve Dagostino. He runs a company dedicated to developing basketball players from Division I to elementary school, everywhere in between, including clients in the NBA. He's worked with players from the Hawks, Blazers, Jazz, Kings, Nets, and Timberwolves. He was a two-time Division II All-American. Steve knows the game, he shares the game, he studies it, and he has clients who care deeply about his input. His story is compelling. It begins now on Keep the Line Moving. This is a busy time of year for you, right?
Yeah, this time of year gets crazy just because there's kind of two parts of my business. There's the local part where we do camps, clinics, workouts for young kids all the way up to like high school players. But then also we have our NBA and college players that are in their off season as well too. So that's kind of me individually as like an NBA pro trainer where I'm traveling a little bit and making sure those guys get what they need during the off season.
Tell everybody your core business, and you've been doing this a while now.
Absolutely. So I'm a basketball player development coach. I don't like to be called a trainer because I think sometimes in the basketball world that has a negative connotation. So I help players and teams get better at basketball. I have a couple different parts to my business. One being the local portion, which is Dags basketball. We run year-round camps, clinics, and workouts for kids from kindergarten all the way up through high school. And I have a staff of a couple of trainers who have been with me for a while, do a really good job running that when I can't be there. And then there's myself as a player development coach. I run camps and clinics nationally. I partnered actually with another player development coach, Justin Cooper, who's like an hour and a half away from me, closer to New York City. Him and I do a lot of our NBA stuff together. And then also I'm a junior national team coach with USA Basketball. So USA Basketball's junior national team is comprised of like the best high school players in the country. And there's a staff of about like 15 to 16 coaches. I'm the only skill development coach on there, but then they shuffle between the coaches for all the mini camps and training camps that they have throughout the year. So those are the main core. You could break it up into two things, right? Just a local and then myself as like a national and an NBA trainer.
So if somebody from the Utah Jazz, or I know you've had clients with the Kings and Jazz, if there was an NBA group, right, like a 3 or 4 players that wanted to work with you, would you then go to them in an ideal scenario?
Yeah, so the NBA stuff is interesting because I've kind of changed my philosophy on it. When I first started as a development coach, it was like, if I could work out an NBA player, I'm in. I don't care where it is, what we're doing, like I'll go work them out. And now the more that you do it, the more you understand that these guys need development and they need, and this will go into my philosophy in a little bit, they need a vision and a plan. And then they need to commit to that. And then they need to be consistent with it. And so a lot of times now what we'll do instead of just going and doing like a random workout with somebody is we have those talks of more like, hey, if we're going to do something, it's going to be for a week or 2 weeks. Or ideally, it's a year-long thing where we have the whole off season. We're together for 6 to 8 weeks. And then we're doing in-season film work and touch points where I'll see them, 5 to 6 times throughout the year. Ideally for me, that's really where growth happens. Growth doesn't happen in one workout. It's just a workout. I'm more into like the development part of these players growing right now.
So you articulated perfectly at the outset here of this conversation. You work with all age groups.
Yeah.
The kids, the high school athlete, the collegiate athlete, and then we just touched on the pros. Yeah. Okay, so let's back up a little bit. So you have the whole gamut of the hoopster, right? The person committed to the great game. So let's back up because you alluded to your philosophy.
Yeah.
Who is Coach Dags and what does he bring to these athletes?
So I think the first thing is I help, especially. So if you want to me, it's different. Like the young players are so different than the college and pro players that are doing it as a job, basically, right? So if you broke it up, like my son's in kindergarten, so I do some kindergarten groups and stuff like that. So we go like kindergarten through 7th, 8th grade. All we're really trying to build is their love for the game. Every time they're in the gym, we're trying to teach them right? So they are learning, but we're trying to get them to love the game. Where nowadays, if you look at youth sports, right, and you could pick any sport, there's talk about it being so crazy, right? The parents are crazy, the coaches are crazy, the schedule is crazy. And we're treating these kids like professional athletes. And so what I've seen in the 15 years that I've done this, I've seen so many players that go through like the professional youth sports. And then when they get to high school and you want them and need them to like, hey, if this is what you want to do, like it's go time, they're drained because they've been working out and being yelled at for 6 years out of their life already. And they get to high school and they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go hang out with my friends. I want to go do this or that. Right. And so like for me, I just want them to love to play basketball and I want to teach them. Those are the only two objectives. Then when they get into high school, if it's something that they really want to become better at and they show that, hey, I'm committed, I'm going to be consistent with the work, then that's when we really help them try and take that next step, right? Here's a vision and a plan. You're trying to walk them through how to be a good teammate, all that good stuff. When they get to the pros, to me, the pros are easy. They need to have a vision and a plan, meaning when they get into the off season, it's 2 or 3 things that they're working on that's backed by either the eye check or by stats. And it's driven by reality, not delusion. So, and here's what I mean by that. My first USA basketball training camp, I was with the under 18 team. They were having tryouts, and Bill Self was the head coach. And there was a kid, it doesn't matter who it is, he's in the NBA now. He was 6'9". And the people around him were telling the coaches and the USA basketball people, he's a point forward. So for people that don't know what that means, that's basically a big guy that can play point guard, bring the ball up, pass, do all this stuff. And, you know, the coaching staff was like, listen, I don't care what you think you are, but for us, you're going to have to guard the other team's center. You're going to be able to guard on the perimeter, rebound inside. Like, here's what I need from you. And so for me, it would have been easy for me to say, hey, to this kid, you are so gifted physically that you should be the best defender in the gym. Easily. That should be your number one goal. So cut forward to, I don't know, 6 years now later, he's one of the best defensive players in the NBA. Doesn't sniff any part of point guard, right? And so like he's a perfect example of, okay, he's becoming a professional athlete. He's one of the best players in the country. Where was his vision and plan? He's so talented that he was always going to be a first-round draft pick. But you could have expedited his growth earlier and his mindset way earlier and got him to really dive into, hey, I'm a defender. I can make open threes. Now let me build the rest of my game. Instead, he was wasting time doing things that he doesn't even do now, you know? And so for me, vision and plan. Then it's the hardest thing with these college and pro guys, because you know this. I think you have this mindset when you're younger, that you see these professional athletes, you're like, man, they're the hardest workers. They work the hardest. And let's be honest, they're not. Some of them are, but most of them are superiorly gifted and talented. What we're trying to do is get them to understand, here's where you are with your talent and your God-given gifts. Here's where you could be with a vision and plan, with commitment, with consistency, and then all the things that you were talking about before, like being a good teammate, showing up on time, being a professional. So really with those guys, you're trying to just link all of that together. And it's really a puzzle, right? Like Kobe said it best, trying to figure out players is a puzzle. No two players are the same. So you're just trying to see where the pieces fit for each of them.
I can't believe you brought up Kobe, because I love to study Kobe. I love what he was about. I loved his approach to the game. He was a hard worker. I mean, my gosh, he would get up before the workout, and then work. You know those stories.
Yep.
Okay, so when people look at you, these athletes that are gifted and they have all this talent, like that guy that was 6'9", he was young, he had all these capabilities, or other folks that you've come across that have all this talent. When they look at you and you're telling them something they don't necessarily want to hear, they want to live outside the perimeter, they want to shoot the threes, they want the glory, or whatever they want. They want to rebound or dunk or whatever their thing is in their mind. How do you, from a communication standpoint, shift their mentality and tell them, listen, if you want to go D1 and then possibly get drafted, if you took this approach to your defense, or,
Yeah.
you're a point forward, or you're a
Yeah.
number 2 guard or whatever, how do you engage in an influential conversation and credibility from yourself?
Yeah, I think film and stats don't lie. So we'll utilize film, we'll utilize stats, we'll utilize like player comparisons um, of players that are already doing what you think that they could do, and maybe you think that the younger player can do it even better, right? And so you could say, hey, and with the NBA, it's kind of easy, right? You say like, hey, this guy, guards really well. He just signed a $50 million deal. You're a better shooter, right, and a better offensive player. You could be way better than him and making 100. Sometimes that helps. The issue, you got to build a relationship with these guys. And so that takes time. So my main NBA player that I train is Kevin Herter from the Sacramento Kings. I was working him out when he was in 8th grade. So, and I'm kind of lucky in the fact that he is super engaged. He's locked in, he listens, he's coachable, but he also gives me feedback as well too. It's not so much me telling him exactly what we're doing, but like we'll watch that film together, and then he'll tell me what he's seeing. He'll tell me what the coaches are telling him, and then it's my job to kind of try to direct him into the area that I think he needs to go. But he's got such a high IQ, and he's like such a normal dude that it's pretty easy with him. I think with other guys that we've had, it's harder and it's a process. And for some of these guys, like we have a guy, again, doesn't matter what his name is, but he just like his energy and effort on defense isn't good. And if he could just get locked in on defense, he would be able to do anything he wanted on offense. He'd get the minutes that he wanted, he'd get freedom on offense, and it just hasn't sunk in with him yet, because his whole life he's been able to just, not really guard, but then on offense be able to score 20, 30, 40 points on a night. So with him, I'm hoping, right, it gets to a point where it's like, hey, okay, we thought originally you didn't play defense, right? You weren't going to play. But now it's to the point where like, you're not going to have a team if you don't play defense, right? And so there sometimes needs to be that, oh, wait, I may lose this. Oh, here's the reality. Okay, now I have to go start doing this thing. Oh, here's what you were talking about. And I think for me, I don't like to argue. I'm not a yeller. I'm not a screamer. We can talk, we can negotiate, we can go back and forth, and we can try to come to a solution. But whatever that is, it's time. That's the vision and plan. Now it's time to commit and be consistent with it. But it can't just be like, oh, yeah, okay, we're going to do this. And then 2 weeks later, there's no commitment or consistency in there. I think that's where guys really, make their mistakes.
So from a credibility standpoint, when you're getting guys to listen to you, right? Getting
Yeah.
players to listen to you,
Yeah.
you were a 2-time collegiate All-American, right? So
Yeah.
tell everybody your story. So they're along for this journey right here of this conversation you and I are having, and they can get the credibility that you have because you overcame adversity like all of us in life. So tell us your story, please.
Yeah. So I was always smaller than everybody else. When I was a freshman, I was 5'3". Played JV my next year, sophomore year, I was 5'6". Played varsity as a 5'6" sophomore. Did all right. And when I was in 9th grade, I kind of committed myself. I'm like, I'm going to do something every day in order for myself to get better at basketball. So shooting, playing 1-on-1, playing 3-on-3, playing 5-on-5, plyometrics, boxing, lifting. Like there was some sort of like 1 or 2 or 3 of those things a day. And I started to see growth. And by the time I was a senior, I was averaging 21 points a game. I was still only like 5'11", 135 pounds. And I was lucky enough that a Division II school right in my town offered me a scholarship. And the coach is a legendary coach there, has over 600 wins. His winning percentage is crazy. He not only offered me a scholarship when other coaches in our area were like, that's like a big miss. He's not a Division II guy, he's a Division III guy. He started me second game into my freshman year, and I started the rest of the games of my career. He didn't care. He believed in me. He gave me a shot. And so I think the biggest thing for me was all I do now is the same stuff I was doing in high school. I was putting myself through the workouts. I was getting people to come to me to play 3-on-3, right? Getting them to go to the YMCA to play 5-on-5. I was getting all these groups together and putting them through playing or workouts. And when I transitioned into being a development coach, I was doing that. I was doing what I was doing with them. And then as I got better, I started to understand how to meet people where they were and do the things that they needed to do to get better. From a credibility standpoint, my story with like pros, they don't care. Like the only thing that they care about is, can I help them get better? And so I think for me, Herder is such a good story, because at Maryland, when he signed to go to Maryland, nobody would have thought he was going to leave early. And then he leaves after his sophomore year. People didn't think he was going to be a first round pick. He ends up going 19. He goes to the Hawks. Nobody thinks he's going to play a ton. He ends up being second team all rookie. 3 years later, he signs like a 4-year, $65 million deal, and now he's on one of the best teams in the Western Conference. And so, that speaks to the way that he works and how good he is as a player. And I hope to think that, like, he's trusted me with his development, and he's certainly developed over the last handful of years.
Something you said that is just eye-opening and so refreshing is you said that you meet these players where they are. And I'm sure that was true for Kevin. So when Kevin's on the road and going around for the Kings and all, does he call you and say, like, hey, so say he had God forbid, a bad night, or something's not going right for him? Tell me about the consultation that you'll have above and beyond what you're doing on the floor.
Yeah, so we do. So during the season, what it looks like for some of these NBA players is we'll do like bi-weekly film or as needed, where I'll chop up. It's not long, but it's just, I watch every game, and then I'll if I see some stuff, I'll kind of note it, but I won't bother them on a night-to-night basis. They all have player development coaches within their staffs on the NBA teams, and I have a relationship with those guys as well too. So I'm not trying to overstep my boundary. Like, they got it, right? But I think, Kevin and I talked about some of the things that he doesn't necessarily get from those guys. And so I try to fill that gap. And so we'll do bi-weekly film. I'll go see him once a month or once every 2 months. But then if there is like emergency, like there was a point this year where he struggled. He wasn't shooting well over like 5 games, and he went like 1 for 11 in that 5th game, like 1 for 11 from 3. And like 30 minutes after the game, he's like, yo, I need film tomorrow. And so I'll break up the film. I'll show him what I'm seeing. And a lot of the times it's just, right, it's that vision and plan and things that we've already talked about in the summer that you're just reminding them and tell them, like, yo, you're all right. You're fine. You're going to shoot yourself out of this. Here's things just to keep in the back of your mind. Try and go, like a couple years ago in Atlanta, after the All-Star break, we talked about him just getting extra reps up, right? Just, you have 30 games left. Make sure you're in the gym extra than what you normally do. And he ends up shooting 42% from 3 after the All-Star break. So like just little things. And again, I liken it to, I'm a big tennis fan. Tennis players have individual development coaches, and tennis to me is the ultimate like mental warfare. You're out there by yourself. If you're having a bad day, like nobody's going to save you. You have to figure it out. And so what I try to do is I'm trying to do more like of the mental side of, everybody thinks, okay, you're not shooting well. Well, what's up with his form? What's up with the mechanics? It's not always that. It's a lot of times it's something that's happening off of the court and outside of the court. So, you just try to make sure that their mind is right. And so a lot of it, again, during the season is like film work, but I let the player drive it, because I don't want them to have a bad day. And then, they're already getting 15 text messages from all different people that I don't want to be another one that's annoying them,
Love it. My last team was the New York Jets, right? And I still have a love for them, obviously, and the other teams that I've been with. And the head coach and the general manager, Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas, would always say, the player that we want has to love ball. And I've mentioned this concept before on this podcast. And that's what I'm hearing from you. You can't make up for someone not loving ball, but can you spot it, Steve? Can you spot when someone walks in the gym and they start, warming up, and you spending a little time with them? What do you do when that ingredient is missing? They don't love it.
Yeah. So over time, you can definitely tell, right? Because somebody might just be having a bad day.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think so. I've kind of changed. Who kind of changed my mind on this was Jokic from the Nuggets. I don't know if he loves basketball, but it's his job, and he takes his job super seriously. So he's playing as hard as he can. He wants to be the best that he can. He's training hard, right? I don't know if he loves it like every day he's out playing for 7 hours. No, here's my job. Here's the hours I need to be in the weight room, right? On the court, taking care of my body, sleeping. And so I think that is kind of what you're saying as well, too. I think there's two parts to that. You love the game or you take your job seriously, especially for the college and professional players, because it is a job. Um, I I struggle with guys that don't have those two things. I really, really struggle with it. Because I don't know how you get better long term if you can't be in the gym consistently and be able to give maximum effort. And that effort doesn't mean that you're running all over the place, but it just means that you're engaged mentally, right? It's you're talking, you're communicating, you're locked in, you're giving feedback, you're getting the most out of the 45 minutes, hour 15 minutes that you're there. I don't know many guys that get better, right? There's like that talent, that God-given baseline. So to my story, what I feel like I've done the best at as a player was maximize what I was given. And I know this because literally anybody that I talk to in the basketball world, like I went to a Celtics pre-draft workout one time, and their director of player personnel or whatever, I met him for the first time, and he was like, "Oh, so you played Division II?" I'm like, "Yeah, I was a Division II All-American, and then played 5 years in Europe." And he kind of like gave me a look, like looked at me, he's like, "Wow, like that's impressive, right? Like look at your body, you know." And so I don't feel like a lot of these professional athletes, and you were around a lot of them, right, for years, they maximize what they were given. They're really good. That doesn't mean they're not talented and they're going to make a lot of money and they score a lot of points or hit a lot of home runs. Doesn't mean that. It just means like, right, you talk about Kobe. Did Kobe maximize what he was given? Yep. Did LeBron? Yep. And so like, yeah, there's other stars that are really good, but they're not maximizing what they were given because they're not engaged. They don't love it. They don't take their job seriously. They're just really, really good basketball players. And the further you get down that line, when you get to the guys who are like just making it into the league, if you have that mindset, you find your way out of the league, you know? So to answer your question, I struggle with it a lot.
Yeah, but you answered that so honestly. How could you go wrong with an answer like that? And if you have that heart to heart with somebody, maybe who's so talented and not maximizing, I guarantee you, I would hope,
Yeah.
right, that they go home or their drive home and they're thinking, wow, I don't know if you could teach it. I've never understood it either, with
Yeah.
like in the leadership space now, right? It's like, you got to work at this. You have
Yeah.
people that you're responsible for. You've got to work at this. This is not something you just walk into an office. I'm a leader and I'm going to wing it. It's the same principles, right? How
Yeah.
many let's just bring that up for a second before we go to our all-star moments here at the end. How often do you talk to other people in other businesses about maximizing talent? Because I have to imagine in the circles that you're running, you're coming in contact with all kinds of different people.
Yeah, it happens a lot. I'm trying to really, like I mentioned, I'm doing more studying and research on tennis and their coaches. My family's been in business for 100 years. They own a concrete manufacturing plant up here in upstate New York, and so not a lot of companies make it over 100 years. So just the time my grandpa was alive, just talking to him about everything that you're saying from a leadership standpoint, my brother and my dad who are over there now, and then just other coaches and trainers. And just I like to a pet peeve of mine are development coaches that think they have the answer to everything. It's impossible. You don't have the answer to everything. There's going to be guys that you can't get better because you don't connect with them. It's just how it is. You can't make I used to think, give me anybody, I can make them better. It's not the case. And it's not the case for anybody, because you're not gonna connect with every single person. You need that connection in order for you to push them forward, right? And so I'm always trying to learn and get better at what I do. And that's not just me saying it. That's me knowing that if I'm not getting better, then I'm not giving Kevin Herter and these other NBA guys and college players the best chance for them to get better too. So I try to ask more questions than I answer.
All right, you ready for the all-star moments? And then we'll call it a day, okay?
Let's do it.
You've got players to train. All right, let's go. They're called all-star moments. Here we go. 6 questions. Just
Yeah.
answer first thought, best thought. Here we go. Rock and roll. How do you deal with adversity?
Oh Man. Uh, Put your head down and work. Put your head down and work.
Love it. How do you give yourself fuel?
Um, Spend time with my family, work out.
Love it. And you have 4 kids. I had to get that in.
Oh yeah, and my wife is, you want to talk about a savage, she handles all of that. So
Awesome. 3, what does never give up mean to you?
there's no failure, right? You're just going to keep going. You mess up, you make a mistake, you lose a game, you have a horrible season. What's the next step?
What is the value of collaboration?
I think it's invaluable.
What are the characteristics of an ideal teammate?
I think they're unselfish. I think that they are more action than talking. So I think those two things.
And lastly here, describe yourself as a leader in 1 sentence.
I've always felt like I've made everybody around me better as a player and as a coach. So when you ask me that, I don't even necessarily think of myself as a leader. I think of myself as a teammate, right? So like with Kevin, like how do I help him get better, right? With my coaches that are on my staff, how am I their teammate? How am I helping them get better? Because in return, it's going to help me get better and it's going to help everybody win.
I love it. And just for frame of reference, we had the CMO of the Boston Red Sox on a few episodes ago, and I asked him about his leadership style. You know what he said?
What?
He has the point guard mentality.
I like that.
Isn't that
I
cool?
like that. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm going to steal that. That's my answer from now on.
Thank you very, very much, Steve.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. It was fun. It was quick, 35 minutes.
And we thank Steve very much for being on the show. My number one takeaway is this. When I asked him about what he learned from his grandfather, having sustained that family business all those years, and he said his grandfather taught him the value of hard work. It's utilizing and maximizing your unique talents through hard work, dedication, and having that underdog mentality. That's what Steve was saying. How good are you as a teammate? All of these factors and tactics can be applied to our everyday lives, right? As leaders or emerging leaders, are you a good teammate? Do you know who you are, right? We talked about that at the beginning of the conversation. And can you maximize your talent to make others better? What a great conversation. Hope you enjoyed it as well. For our podcast producer, Paul Salazar, I am Chris Gargano. Thank you, everybody, each and every week for being part of Keep the Line Moving.
We thank you for listening to Keep the Line Moving. We would love it if you subscribed or left a review. For more podcast episodes, check out our YouTube page. If you'd like to work with the Gargano Leadership Group, check out our website. This has been a GLG production, copyright 2023. For our podcast producer, Paul Salazar, and our marketing coordinator, Savin Narwal. Have a great week, everyone.